¿A dónde está papi? 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 ¿A dónde está papi?
Welcome to the Tuesday stream. I hope everyone's having an awesome Tuesday. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, Cosmic Seeking Alio, Michael Hassler. Welcome, everybody. Alrighty. Sorry about that, folks. Once again, I was stuck at work. Again. Yeah, I'm not really interested in seeing like an entire debate. Or any of this. I've been gone for 5 days. Oh, yeah. That is true. Alright, folks. We definitely have quite a few things to cover. And I am a bit short on time, so we'll see what I can do. First and foremost, thank you to the couple of folks who have subscribed to the YouTube channel. We are now at 217 subscribers, so that's pretty cool. Thank you. I appreciate that, folks. I watched the I don't know what SCOUS and Biden speech. Oh, okay. All right, folks, let's get this started.
"15% of the northern hemisphere has permafrost underneath it. Technically, that's ground that's been frozen for at least 2 years, but much of it has been frozen for millennia, and it stores a staggering amount of carbon locked safely away in the soil as long as it stays below 32 degrees. I don't think viewers of this channel will be surprised to learn that it's already begun thawing due to global warming. But new research shows that with just a little bit more warming, a tipping point could be reached, causing a sudden and widespread change to this frozen ground.
So there's around about 1,500 gigatons of carbon locked on in this permafrost that becomes available for release when it falls. That's actually about 2.5 times the amount that humanity has emitted so far.
This is one of the first major climate tipping points that human emissions could trigger, and it's a feedback loop where global warming releases carbon, which speeds up warming. So what does this mean for our planet's climate? And are any efforts to slow global warming totally doomed if this carbon bomb is triggered? In this episode of Weathered, we're talking to the scientists behind this new research who actually have a pretty good answer to that question, so watch till the end to find out. And if you appreciate this kind of science-based climate content, hit like and subscribe. Back in 2008, Tim Linton published a groundbreaking paper outlining 9 climate tipping points that, once triggered, could be irreversible, leading to the collapse of many important Earth systems and contributing significantly to global warming. At that time, other scientists were skeptical, but now, sadly, his work has become highly respected. Back then, permafrost didn't make the list. So we were very interested to read Dr. David Armstrong Mackay's new research, which finds that a permafrost abrupt thaw could be triggered even if we meet the most aggressive targets of the Paris Agreement. That would suddenly make a lot of carbon available to be released as carbon dioxide, as well as methane, which is some 85 times more potent of a greenhouse gas than CO2 over its first 20 years in the atmosphere. Because permafrost is deep underground, it's hard to measure, but we know that a gradual thaw of permafrost is already happening.
When we try to quantify it, this change in permafrost extent, you just look for where on the globe do we still have a temperature below 0 degree in the ground.
And they found that since 1997, in fact, this permafrost extent has decreased by 2.5%.
Oh, the Supreme Court. Gotcha.
that remains below 0 degrees has been frozen since the last ice age, keeping dormant all of the tiny microbes that break down organic matter and release greenhouse gases. It's almost all in latitudes far north where it's warming 4 times faster than the global average.
Yeah.
And when it thaws, those little microbes start quickly digesting carbon into either CO2 if they're dry or methane if they're underwater. It's a process called soil respiration. Dr. David Armstrong Mackay's new paper breaks down permafrost tipping points into 2 stages. The first, and most likely, is the abrupt thaw.
This is something a bit newer that's been researched recently. This is not in most climate models. And this is that you can get all these localized tipping point starting.
David outlined 3 related examples for us. The first is landslides known as slumps or thaw slumps.
So you can imagine these more steeper slopes that have permafrost underneath them. If you're melting some of the ice blocks that are in them, you can get little slumps happening, and that can turn into landslides effectively. And that gouges out large amounts of land. That leaves a lot of the carbon exposed to be degraded and rot and release
That's
greenhouse
not
gases
good.
as well.
And there are several hundreds of thousands of these thaw slumps across the Arctic. It's a really huge number. You find them in North America, you find them all across Siberia.
The ground subsiding as permafrost thaws can also lead to the second local tipping point, known as thermokarst lakes.
It starts off with a little bit of slumping that forms a lake above it, and effectively it keeps on spreading outwards as this lake forms. The lake forming accelerates and amplifies the decay of permafrost underneath it. So effectively each thermokarst lake is kind of like a little tipping point in action. These sort of features like slumping and thermokarst lakes can make deeper carbon more available more quickly than if you're just thawing gradually from the top down. And that's something that can really amplify emissions.
And the third example of a localized tipping point came as a real surprise to scientists and everyone, really.
So maybe you have heard about these craters in Siberia. They were really,
Yes.
a lot in the news. And that's from this really old methane in the ground. Yeah, so that's kind of trapped beneath the permafrost. And some researchers, they think it's due to the thawing permafrost that the hot summers triggered the release.
Since they became newsworthy back in 2014, at least 17 of these craters have been found. And there are even reports of locals in Siberia hearing loud explosions before finding new ones. Many scientists now agree that these craters were caused by a sudden release of a pocket of methane that was capped and held underground by permafrost. As it thaws, the structure weakens, and the methane
Yeah, they're like basically like big methane potholes, essentially. In northeast Russia, they have vastly huge deep holes. Yeah, this is like methane potholes. Not good.
can cause a bulge on the surface until it explodes, leaving behind large mysterious craters and exposing lots of deep carbon that will thaw even more. With more warming, they could become more common. But when will all of these small local tipping points hit a more significant threshold?
So a key piece of evidence here is that in one of the previous warm interglacials, the amount of permafrost fall really expanded by around about 1.5 degrees of warming to expand over a much wider area than was seen before in other interglacials. And 1.5 degrees really does mean that there's quite a lot of permafrost fall expanding over a larger area. So that's why we assign that as being what we call a regional impact climate tipping element, because even though it's not one coherent tipping element, it still affects a really large area, and it does have an impact on the whole Earth system as well because of the amplification of the emissions from permafrost. It really has a substantial global impact as a result.
We've already warmed the planet more than 1.1 degrees Celsius, so 1.5 degrees could come quickly. In fact, a number of studies show that we could cross the 1.5 degrees sometime during the 2030s. And unfortunately, that number falls well within the Paris Agreement goals, which aim to keep warming under 2 degrees. But as we've covered in a previous episode, we're currently on track for around 2.6 degrees of total warming. Still, how bad is this tipping point?
if you add it all up, it looks a bit like 10% amplification of global warming from human causes. So it's big, but it's not dominant. It's more of a gradual chronic leak that we're triggering that will just make it that much harder to try and actually get global warming to stop and halt, preferably at the 1.5 degree level.
So that's mixed news. From a climate perspective, we definitely don't want 10% more warming outside of our control. Thankfully, those emissions happen over a century or more, but there's another far more dire tipping point that could be crossed if we overshoot the Paris Agreement targets by around 1 full degree Celsius.
Yeah, like the problem here is that it'd be one thing if like the climate is like moving in its natural ebb and flow. The problem that we're experiencing is that human activity is accelerating climate change to the point where we are causing incredible ecological harm. We are risking our ability to essentially have sustainable, stable ecosystems on which we depend on. I mean, just like so many things could be said, the problem is that it's happening very quickly and it's our fault, essentially.
So there are some regions where permafrost is a lot deeper. The Yedema region, it covers parts of eastern Siberia and Far East Russia, and also goes into Alaska and northern Canada as well. And it's really deep deposits left from one of the previous ice ages, basically.
Maple Leaf Dragon
And it's very
with
rich in
a
carbon.
large amount
with
of
a tier
carbon
1
found
sub
in
for
Yedoma
13 months. Holy yikes. Wow. You just crossed over that 1-year threshold. Looking forward to sharing another difficult year with you. I appreciate that. Indeed.
permafrost, about 2% by mass, is the result of abundant vegetation and animals like woolly mammoths that populated the region during the last ice age, which began around 2 million years ago. Over time, this material became frozen in the permafrost, preventing its decomposition and preserving the organic carbon within it. And in addition to this carbon-dense soil and millions of woolly mammoth tusks, the Yedoma is also filled with deep ice deposits.
The ice is important because that's part of why you get abrupt fall affecting these areas so badly. Because if you melt some of these big ice inclusions and ice layers, suddenly the whole landscape can just sort of slump. It can collapse under itself because it's losing mass from that ice.
Bring on the anthrax.
And that means that you can suddenly expose a lot of deeper carbon quite quickly. And the more carbon is being exposed, and the more carbon is degrading simultaneously, the more warmth that's going to release.
And David and his team believe that the thaw of this Yedoma permafrost could begin at around 3 degrees of warming and becomes more likely at 4 degrees.
So that's where the possibility of this self-sustaining permafrost fall, which is sometimes referred to as compost bomb instability. The idea being it's like a compost heap that generates its own heat and keeps it's effectively kind of like a reactor going to itself.
This compost bomb instability is the result of what is known as compost warming reaction, which is a process that occurs naturally when organic matter breaks down and decomposes. As this matter breaks down, it can act as fuel for microorganisms, leading to an increase in temperature. As the temperature increases, the decomposing activity of the microorganisms also increases, leading to further release of heat. This process creates a positive feedback loop where warming leads to further decomposition, which leads to more warming, which leads to, well, you get the idea.
Yeah.
And the same thing might be possible with permafrost, where there's enough of this carbon together. So that could happen in some of these Yedoma regions.
One bit of good news here is that the Yedoma tends to be found very far north.
Luckily, there's some of the colder regions, and that's why you tend to need a higher warming level to potentially trigger those.
Yeah, unless the fossil fuel industry finds coal or oil under the permafrost and starts digging. Yeah, bring in the drills, I guess.
So would this tipping point be truly catastrophic for the climate? Well, David stressed that he and his team aren't sure if or when it will happen, but he found that a collapse of the Yedoma and similar permafrost formations could increase atmospheric CO2 by up to 60 parts per million over 50 years, We're currently at about 420 parts per million, and 350 is considered safe. That, on top of the 4 degrees of warming it would take to trigger the thaw, could mean catastrophe. Thankfully, that level of warming is likely a long way into the future, and we do have time to reduce emissions before it hits. But what do you think? Will we keep warming low enough to avoid either of the permafrost tipping points we discussed here?
No.
And how many woolly mammoth tusks will we find if we don't?
I think finding like woolly mammoth tusks will be the least of our worries. If it gets to that point, I'm gonna be honest. But yeah. Climate tipping points are something to definitely pay attention. Because the whole point of a tipping point is that once it passes that threshold, it's kind of GG. We have a lot more desertification to create before we get there. Nice. Not with the present world leadership. No, not this current. Not this iteration. This is how the world's leaders, especially the world's leaders who shoulder the most responsibility, refusing to act adequately. Yeah, no, we're not really seeing a world where we actually are able to hit those targets, those ideal targets.
So if you're like me, you've always known that all of the Republican claims about the 2020 election being stolen were completely false from the start. You've known that they've never actually had any evidence to back this up, even though they swear they have evidence to back it up. But again, if you're like...
Yeah, like, we've been waiting for any kind of, like, remote shred, any shred of evidence. We've been waiting for this for 3 years at this point, and nothing.
Like me, you've also wondered, like, well, where are they getting this stuff? Who's making it up? Who is out there telling...
Well, I mean, it's definitely the Donald Trump wing, which is basically the entire Republican Party. In reality, we want to undershoot those so-called targets. Oh yeah, but that's not even like in the books. that's not gonna even, that isn't even worth attempting, because it's already gone. Right-wing evidence equals I feel it in my bones. True. What's hey, salty bread is good. What's this with time travelers? What? Time travelers? There are time travelers? Where?
Republicans.
Oh, yeah, okay. We'll get to that. Salty bread is
the
good.
2020 election was stolen. We now have an answer to that, thanks to the court documents filed last week by Dominion Voting Systems. And it turns out that Sidney Powell uncovered this so-called evidence from a self-described decapitated time traveler.
Yep, you heard it here, folks.
I wish I was making that up. I wish I was embellishing. I wish this was all some big April Fool's joke in the middle of February, but folks, it's not.
No, this isn't Lindell. Well, maybe it has to do with Lindell. This is Sidney Powell. It has nothing to do with Lindell right now.
Sidney Powell claims to have gotten evidence of voter fraud from a woman who claims to be a decapitated time traveler.
Yeah.
And this, of course, as I said, it wasn't all revealed in the Dominion filing last week. They only revealed excerpts of it. And of course let me read. I got to read it first.
Is this even worth talking about? It's so ridiculous. Yeah. It is worth talking about, because like millions of people believed this stuff. Okay, we literally had an insurrection based on this BS. We literally had an insurrection based off this BS. So yeah, I think it's worth talking about, unfortunately.
So, just so you know, this is what Sidney Powell received. Who am I, and how do I know all of this? I've had the strangest dreams since I was a little girl. I was internally decapitated, and yet I live. The wind tells me I'm a ghost, but I don't believe it. She also says that she can,
Oh man.
quote, time travel in a semi-conscious state.
Yes, internally decapitated. Why, bro? Are all of you in USA like Biden? Yes. 100% of the United States likes President Biden. You're completely correct.
So again, a internally decapitated semi-conscious time traveler has emailed Sidney Powell and said, I've got all these claims of voter fraud because, I'm a internally decapitated semi-conscious time traveler. And Sidney
Is
Powell,
she also eternally
upon reading
high or something? Probably.
these claims from this individual who sent her this message, didn't
By the way, this was all based on an email. Very normal stuff going on here. Bad for you, get well soon. Thanks. I'm feeling all right. I'm not sick. Thank you for asking, and thank you for that anyways. Clown.
say, okay, we need to reach out and get this person help. She didn't say, this is garbage, I'm going to throw this away and never think about it again. No, Sidney Powell was like, I guess this all seems plausible, right? I mean, if
Oh my
it's a
God, it's
semi-conscious
2023,
decapitated
folks.
time traveler, who am I to argue that point?
It's 2023, and it's 2023, and we're talking about evidence given via email by some random person claiming to be a time traveler that had a dream and was internally decapitated in that dream, but somehow I don't freaking know.
So then Sidney Powell takes this email and someone in her office forwards it directly
True. I guess by that, yeah, Maple Leaf Dragon. I guess by that, we're all time travelers.
to Fox News host Maria Bartiromo. So they didn't ignore it. They didn't write it off as somebody who, maybe is not all there. They said, wait till you get a load of this. Obviously, this is a big thing. The time traveler says this is what happened. It got to the point where Bartiromo was actually asked about this email in her deposition. And Bartiromo, of course, called it nonsense. However, just a day or two after Powell sends this intel from the decapitated time traveler to Fox News host Maria Bartiromo, Bartiromo brings Sidney Powell on her program to spread election lies. Now, during that segment, which occurred on, it was November 8th, when Powell was brought on, so the email was sent prior to November 8th. So, after you get an email from Sidney Powell saying, oh boy, we got him, this decapitated time traveler has all the evidence, Maria Bartiromo was like, hey, producers, call up Sidney Powell. Let's put her on the air. We're going to talk about all this election info. Now, neither of these two women actually mention.
Well, none of these are leaders except for Trump. Trump is like basically the head of the Republican Party. That's about it. Everybody else is like falling in line under him.
And the decapitated time traveler on the program, but they still went out there to make these claims that, of course, have now gotten Fox News sued for $1.6 billion. But I want you to think for a moment about the fact that Sidney Powell went to law school. Sidney Powell has passed the bar. And Sidney Powell was handed information from a woman who describes herself as an internally decapitated, semi-conscious time traveler. And Sidney Powell did not immediately say, please don't ever show me this stuff again. She said, yeah, this sounds right. I'm gonna run with it. I love it so much.
I mean, like, you really have to perform Olympic levels of mental gymnastics to will that narrative into existence. So it's not really that far-fetched that you would be looking for evidence from a random email about a person claiming to be a decapitated time traveler. So yeah, this is just like a testament to the Olympic levels of mental gymnastics necessary to will this into existence. Is it the Florida governor that might also run for president? Yes, he might also run for president as far as I know. No official announcement, but he might. She's going for the insanity plea? I don't think so. I think she believes this.
I'm gonna forward it to the people at Fox News. They'll love this. And that's where we are. That's where Sidney Powell apparently got at least some of her evidence. And I'm willing to bet at this point that maybe the bar associations, state by state, wherever Sidney Powell is licensed, maybe this is kind of the wake-up call to reevaluate her and determine that she might not be fit to be an attorney if she thinks that a semi-conscious, internally decapitated time traveler is a credible witness.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. This here is little Athena. And Athena would like to know why you haven't subscribed.
True. Subscribe for the Athena. Anywho. Yeah, like, it would be one thing if, like, they at least attempted to make the effort of having this quote-unquote witness. Because, like, she's a lawyer, so she should know that, like, you know, you might want to have some kind of witness testimony under oath. But, okay, whatever. So I know this story has already probably gotten around, but I kind of just want to reiterate this. Fox News hosts thought Trump's election fraud claims were total BS. That's right. If you're some kind of like Fox News viewer for some reason and you just also happen to be here, or you just also happen to come across this channel, oh man, do we have news for you. Faux entertainment indeed. Hosts at Fox News privately ridiculed Donald Trump's claim that the 2020 election was stolen while simultaneously peddling the same lies on air. Because it's not about the truth, it's not about news. Right-wing personalities, Tucker Carlson. Right-wing personalities, that's one way of putting it, I guess. Sean Hannity, Laura Ingraham are among those named in the $1.6 billion dollar action brought by Dominion Voting Systems, the seller of the electronic voting hardware and software that is suing Fox News and parent company Fox Corporation for maligning its reputation. He's acting like an insane person, Hannity allegedly wrote of Trump in the weeks following the election as the co-host continued to push the so-called big lie during his top-rated primetime show, aided by a succession of election deniers he had on as guests. Even billionaire owner Rupert Murdoch was dismissive of the former president's false allegations the filing alleges, calling them really crazy stuff in one memo to a Fox executive and criticizing Trump's scattergun approach of pursuing lawsuits in numerous states to try to overturn his defeat. Yeah, like, this is what really gets me, is that they knew, this was all bullshit. And again, this was the pretext on which insurrectionary behavior happened. So take that in. Like, insurrectionary behavior happened, and they were the ones that fueled this. consciously because they knew it was bullshit. It was very hard to credibly claim foul everywhere, Murdoch wrote, adding in another note that Trump's obsession with trying to prove fraud was terrible stuff, damaging everybody. Meanwhile, Tucker Carlson, one of the network's most prominent and controversial stars, sure, that's one way of putting it, was disdainful of Sidney Powell, a senior Trump attorney, who repeatedly claimed Dominion's machines flipped votes cast for Trump to Biden. Sidney Powell's lying, he wrote to a producer. The Dominion lawsuit alleges he referred to Powell in a text as an unguided missile and dangerous as hell. Carlson said, was a demonic force who was good at destroying things. He was the undisputed world champion of that, and he could easily destroy us if we play it wrong. Like, again, acknowledging that all of this is just BS. Nothing gets in the way of increasing profit margins. True. Perhaps Powell is being paid to be Trump's patsy to throw under the bus. No, I don't think that's what's happening here. I think she's completely full on, like, bought hook, line, and sinker into this. And to a degree, a lot of these, like Lindell, is pretty much bought into this. It's just so irritating hearing about the voter fraud stuff all the time. There are obviously external and internal forces in the U.S. that attempt to sway the elections, but it's nowhere near enough to make a difference in the last election. Yeah, but this isn't just your average, like, voter fraud stuff. This is like the president of the United States, who is currently also running again. Who's also running. He's officially a candidate again. Talking about, like, rigged elections and whatever, and then, like, to add kind of like oil to the fire, he's reposting stuff about how, like, people should arm themselves if they try to steal it from him again. Like, yo, I know that it keeps, coming up, but man, yeah, it's really bad. It is really bad. Hey, Bipedal Meatbag, how's it going? I'm still waiting for the Kraken. Fellow host Laura Ingraham, the original Nazi Barbie, told Carlson that Powell was a complete nut. No one will work with her. Ditto with Rudy, referring to the former New York mayor and Trump supporter Rudy Giuliani. Hannity, meanwhile, said in a deposition that the whole narrative that Sidney was pushing, I did not believe it for a second. That's very interesting, because it sounds like, especially based on the stuff that he spews, that he does believe it, or on air he was pushing the election fraud bullshit. And, like, it's not just like the ripple effects of, like, the stochastic terrorism that this narrative has fueled. An example would be the obvious January 6th insurrection, but also, like, these conservatives who may not even be completely bought into the idea have used this as cover to attempt to implement election reform or election security bills with absolutely no evidence as to why they're needed, but they've used this as a shield to pass these undemocratic election integrity legislation. It is the January 6th report that is spurring this on? No, this is a lawsuit that is happening against Fox News by Dominion. This is what's being revealed, as far as we know, from this lawsuit. Hannity having phone sex with Trump for 3 years. Yeah, I guess. Fellow host, Hannity meanwhile said he does not believe it for 1 second. According to Dominion's filings, other internal communications revealed that Fox News executives, hosts, and researchers used phrases including mind-blowing nuts, totally off the rails, and complete BS to describe the false election theories that they were publicly promoting. All were included in the 192-page redacted summary judgment brief filed on Thursday at the Delaware Superior Court by Dominion's attorneys. A trial is set to is scheduled to begin mid-April, so in almost 2 months from now. Not a single Fox witness testified in the depositions that they believed any of the allegations about Dominion are true. Indeed, Fox witness after Fox witness declined to assert the allegations' truth or actually stated that they do not believe in them. Remember, this entire thing is based on the idea that that they knew, and yet they still pushed this garbage. Trump/Fox News relationship is basically this: oh look, the gas line seems to have a leak. Let's ignite it and burn off the local excess. It's still burning. Let's open up all the valves and get the burn off to burn off faster. The surrounding towns are all on fire. Let's release a large amount of gas to cause an explosion and use up all this oxygen, and well, the state appears to be on fire now. True. But putting the stuff into public makes it inadmissible as evidence? No, that's not how this works. No, that's not how this works. This is the real reason why Fox is dumping Trump. Probably because they're staring down a $1.6 billion lawsuit. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. The brief highlighted a November 8, 2020 interview on Maria Bartiromo's show in which Powell insisted that Dominion voting machines were used to engage in election fraud. Bartiromo knew what Powell intended to say before the interview, according to the filings, in part because Powell had forwarded an email to her revealing the source came from a woman who got her information from The Wind, which is the video that Farron was making about. Yardwork, how's it going? Echo Wrestle Dragon, how's it going? Saved by capitalistic self-interest. Maybe, or maybe not. Who knows? As they stare down this $1.6 billion lawsuit. I don't know if they're saved, per se. According to a report from Politico, the former president's campaign staffers are trying to figure out a way for Trump to talk about his part in overturning Roe v. Wade by stacking the Supreme Court with extreme conservative judges. Yeah, well, the thing is, most likely they're going to end up not having to talk about it. They're probably not going to talk about it. They'll just divert the conversation or divert rhetoric about the justices or maybe not even talk about them at all. You maybe from a from a strategic political point, are we allowed to talk about the fact that you're a fucking Nazi? No, fuck off. Too much truth. There's absolutely no truth in that statement. I award you no points, and you can go fuck yourself. Shame. Just coming in right there with the racism. Yeah, just straight up can I interest you in the Jewish question? No, bro. Fuck off. apparently he didn't read the sign. He didn't read the sign. Look. It says clearly that I have a diploma in from the Advanced International School of Bullshit Detection. Okay? So why would you even come in here with bullshit? It's right there on the top right-hand corner. I don't understand. Yeah, don't make us tap the sign. Operation Warp Speed and overturning of Roe aren't really necessarily clear political winners. Not for Republicans. Not for Republicans. So yes, who revealing her source came from a woman who got her information from The Wind. That was the Farron Cousins video. The Fox News executives responsible for Bartiromo's show, David Clark, admitted in a deposition that he would not have allowed that cling to be aired if he knew about the crazy theory from that email. Yeah, but he did. He did, and it wasn't the first time. Alio with the 12 biddies. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. The following also shows Hannity and others were critical of their own network for its early call of Arizona for Biden on election night, which enraged Trump. Hannity texted Carlson and Ingram that the call destroyed a brand that took 25 years to build and the damage is incalculable, while Carlson called it an act of vandalism. Why? For accurately, recalling a race? What? Yeah, dude. Imagine thinking that, imagine thinking that your brand can get destroyed by simply reporting on what was obvious, based on apparently very accurate models, and ended up being what happened after the counts, after the recounts, calling it an act of vandalism. You know, the only act of again, this is the whole theory. Every accusation is just a confession. The act of vandalism is being done by them, by people like Carlson, Hannity, Bartiromo, Laura Ingraham. Attorneys for the cable news station argued in a counterclaim that the lawsuit was an assault on the First Amendment. No, Marjorie Taylor Greene is not a political pundit. She's a congressperson. The lawsuit is currently against Fox News. Was an assault on the First Amendment. What? How could this be an assault on the First Amendment? This doesn't make any sense. The government isn't going around telling Fox News that they can't publish that? What? Okay. They said Dominion had advanced novel defamation theories and was seeking a staggering damage figure aimed at generating headlines and chilling protected speech. No. Defamatory language, if proven in a civil court, is not protected speech. Dominion brought this lawsuit to punish Fox News for reporting on the biggest stories of the day. Allegation. What? No, that's not a big story. Perpetuating bullshit is not a story. Allegations by the sitting president and the U.S. and his surrogates that the 2020 election was affected by fraud. The very fact of those allegations are newsworthy. Okay, but you're supposed to report it in a way that accurately reflects what's actually happening here. Could you report on the fact that, Trump allegedly said X, Y, or Z? Yeah, but also be like, there's absolutely no evidence to these claims. These are just simple ramblings of the ex-president. That's it. Fox responded to the new claims in a statement to ABC News. There will be a lot of noise and confusion generated by Dominion and their opportunistic private equity owners as opposed to your private interests. Like, bro, you're one of the, if not the biggest news network. The core of this case remains about freedom of the press and freedom of speech. Nah, I don't think they're being genuine when they talk like that. No thanks, I don't believe it. Okay, let's see. Oh yeah, this is the Politico article that you're talking about. Yeah, I mean, like the only thing that Trump is probably going to play, the only thing that he has to play is like the culture war bullshit. That's where they're gonna go. But yeah. Fox shouldn't be legally allowed to call themselves news. True. Messages officer. This is from the AP. Officer tried often fed information to Proud Boy leaders. Cool. Nice. Very normal stuff. A police officer frequently provided Proud Boys leader Enrique Tarrio with internal information about law enforcement operations in the weeks before other members of his far-right extremist group stormed the U.S. Capitol in the insurrection, according to messages shown Wednesday at the trial of Tarrio and his 4 associates. A federal prosecutor showed jurors a string of messages that Metropolitan Police Lieutenant Shane Lamont and Tarrio privately exchanged in a run-up to the mob into this insurrectionary attack on January 6th. Lamont is an intelligence officer for the city. For the city's police department, was responsible for monitoring groups like the Proud Boys when they came to Washington for protests. Less than 3 weeks before the January 6th insurrection, Lamont warned Tarrio that the FBI and Secret Service were all spun up over talk on an InfoWars internet show that the Proud Boys planned to dress up as supporters of President Biden on the Democrats' inaugural day. The Justice Department prosecutor Connor Mulrow asked the government witness FBI Special Agent Peter Drabowski how common it is for law enforcement to disclose internal information in that fashion. He quoted said, "I never heard of it. Is not Tarrio a double agent? Well, supposedly he was a informant to the FBI, but this has nothing to do with that. This is an article about a intelligence officer for the police feeding information to Enrique Tarrio about what was going on with law enforcement. Not that Enrique Tarrio was giving them information. It's the other way around. The police were working with the Proud Boys. Tarrio was arrested in Washington 2 days before the Capitol attack and was charged with burning a BLM banner taken from a historic black church during a protest in December of 2020. He was released from jail before the riot and wasn't in Washington. Before the insurrection. Let's get it right. And wasn't in Washington on January 6th. In a message to Tarrio on December 25th of 2020, Lamont said that Metropolitan Police Department investigators had asked him to identify Tarrio from a photograph. He warned Tarrio that police may be seeking a warrant for his arrest. Later on that day of his arrest, Tarrio posted a message to other Proud Boy leaders said the warrant was just signed. In other words, he was getting a heads up from the cops. From this particular cop. Before the trial started in January, Tarrio's attorney said Lamont's testimony would be crucial for his defense, supporting Tarrio's claim that he was looking to avoid violence. Mulrow said that Lamont has asserted his Fifth Amendment rights against self-incrimination. Was the officer a double agent? Too bad this is all real, not a soap opera. Well, the officer wasn't a double agent. He was an asshole who was collaborating with domestic terrorists. But that's basically it. I mean, if you really want to distill it, the cop here was essentially working with these domestic terrorists. Tario's attorneys have accused prosecutors of bullying Lamont into keeping quiet by warning the officer that he could be charged with obstructing the investigation into Tario, a Miami resident who is national chairman of the Proud Boys. Prosecutors have denied this claim. Sabino Jaragi, one of Tario's attorneys, said that other messages show Tario routinely cooperated with police and had provided Lamont with useful information. Yeah, sure. Sure, I totally believe that. Jaragi, whatever his name is, said prosecutors dragged Lamont's name through the mud and falsely insinuated he is a dirty cop who had an inappropriate relationship with Tario. Well, I don't know. You tell me what that looks like. You tell me what that looks like when the leader of this domestic terrorist organization is getting advance notice of what was going on beforehand. You tell me what that looks like. That was their theme over and over again, Jaragi told U.S. District Judge Timothy Kelly during a break-in testimony. Lamont was placed on administrative leave by the police force in February of 2022, according to Mike Shamal, an attorney for the officer. Shamal said that Lamont aided in Tario's arrest for burning the BLM banner. In a statement Wednesday, Shamal said that Lamont's job required him to communicate with a variety of groups protesting in Washington, and his conduct was appropriate and always focused on protecting the protection of the citizens of Washington, D.C. Sure. Which particular citizens? Couldn't be collusion, could it? No, couldn't be. At no time did Lieutenant Lamont ever assist or support the hateful and divisive agenda of any of the various groups that came to DC to protest. That's interesting. Yeah, these hateful and divisive agendas, these hateful and divisive agendas of these groups came to DC to protest. Explain to me how that sentence makes sense. But okay, whatever. Again, how is it then that the Enrique Tario guy was receiving advanced information? Explain that one to me. More importantly, Lieutenant Lamont is a decorated official who does not condone the hateful rhetoric or legal conduct on the January 6th and was only communicating with these individuals because the mission required it. Yeah, sure. Whatever, dude. The Michigan Republican Party decided on Saturday to entrust its future to the hands of election denier Christina Caramo as its new chairperson, despite the fact that she just suffered a brutal rebuke from voters when she ran for Secretary of State in the midterms. Yeah, well, it's the Republican Party. I mean, you know, I keep making this argument that it is the Republican Party. Trump is the Republican Party, from top to bottom. From federal to state to local. Tario and his 4 lieutenants are charged with seditious conspiracy for what prosecutors said was a plot to stop the peaceful transfer of presidential power and keep former President Trump in the White House after the 2020 election. Thousands of insurrectionists stormed the Capitol, disrupting a joint session of Congress for certifying the Electoral College vote. Proud Boy members described the group as politically incorrect men's club for Western chauvinists. No, they're domestic terrorists. They often brawled with anti-fascist activists at rallies and protests for years before the Capitol insurrection. In a message to Tario in December 18th of 2020, Lamont said other police investigators had asked him if the Proud Boys are racist. The officer said he told them that the group had black and Latino members, so that's not a racist thing. No, of course not. It's not being investigated by the FBI, though, just us. So again, he's forwarding information that's happening. To which Tario replies, awesome. Cool. In another exchange that day, Lamont asked Tario if he had called in an anonymous tip claiming responsibility for the flag burning. I did more than that. It's on my social media. In a message to Tario on December 11th of 2020, Lamont told him about the whereabouts of anti-fascist activists. An officer asked Tario if he should share that information with uniformed police officers or keep it to himself. So, like, it's specific. It's incredibly specific. Like, oh yeah, here are the groups that you obviously have like problems with or opposed to. What should you do about this? Or maybe you should do something about this. I don't know. 2 days later, Tario asked Lamont what the police department's general consensus was about the Proud Boys. That's too complicated for a text to answer, Lamont. That's an in-person conversation over a beer. That's a massive indictment of police in general, right? Because instead of being like, hey, most cops are not really on board with the whole like domestic terrorism stuff, the answer becomes it's too complicated for a text. We should probably have that in person where no one can track us really, electronically anyways, over a beer. Yeah. It's kind of an indictment on police, huh? On the police. Tario's co-defendants are Proud Boy chapter leader Ethan Nordian of Auburn, Washington, Joseph Biggs of Ormond Beach, Florida, a self-described Proud Boy organizer Zachary Rell, who led a Proud Boy chapter in Philadelphia, and Dominic Pizzola, a group member from Rochester, New York. These are among a slew of Proud Boy members facing charges in the insurrection. In a separate case this week, the president of a West Virginia chapter of the group, Jeffrey Finley, was sentenced to 75 days behind bars after pleading guilty to a misdemeanor illegal entry charge. The Associated Press sent an email to Finley's attorney seeking comment on Wednesday. So TLDR, yeah, the cops are basically helping these domestic terrorists. And it's not just this one cop. This one cop is like the main, like, I guess the information point, the point of contact. Based on, what we can gather from the story. But based on the conversations that they had, this is the general consensus could not just be said over text, because that would be very awkward if that was recorded or intercepted. But instead, that police officer said we could probably talk about it in person over a beer, which gives me the implication or the impression that maybe the police officers don't really disagree with the Proud Boys, and by their actions in the past, have helped them. So that's a problem. Police literally being implicated in the aid of domestic terrorists is a huge problem. All right, folks. Just kind of shifting gears really quickly. Ohio governor drinks tap water as the EPA demands Norfolk Southern to manage all cleanup of a toxic train wreck or face consequences. It looks like the EPA is going to take the lead on this. The US EPA is ordering Norfolk to handle and pay for all necessary cleanup after a train carrying toxic chemicals has derailed in eastern Palestine, Ohio. The EPA announced its legally binding order on Tuesday, 18 days after the freight train derailed. The disaster ignited a days-long inferno and shot plumes of black smoke into the air and led to intentional release of vinyl chloride to help avert a more catastrophic blast. Some residents have reported health problems. About 3,500 fish have died in Ohio waterways since the wreck. Norfolk Southern will pay for cleaning the mess that they created and the trauma they inflicted on this community. Or, I would say that maybe we should relieve them of this and just nationalize all the rail companies and be done with it. If you ask my opinion, we should just nationalize the rail companies and be done with it. Well, that's true, Red Jersey. Some residents have reported health... Oh, yeah. Norfolk will pay, blah, blah, blah. As part of the EPA's legally binding order, Norfolk will be required to identify and clean up any contaminated soil and water resources, reimburse the EPA for cleaning services to be offered to residents and businesses to provide an additional layer of reassurance, which will be conducted by EPA staff and contractors, attend and participate in public meetings at the EPA's request, and post information online, and pay for the EPA's costs for work performed under this order. The order will take effect Thursday. The EPA said it will exercise its strongest authority against the train operators under CER CLA, Comprehensive Environmental Response, Compensation and Liability Act. In no way, shape, or form will Norfolk Southern get off the hook for the mess that they created. But they already did, though. The damage is done. The damage is done, and the failure has already happened. The failure already happened. If the rail company fails to meet the demands, the EPA said it will immediately step in and conduct the necessary work and then seek to compel Norfolk to pay triple the cost. I mean, it should just be done with. Yeah, they're going to have to pay. And at this point, they should just be nationalized. Fuck them. Don't care. Don't care. It is unfathomable that these private companies fudge the system so hard. They buy politicians. The politicians relax regulations. They lobby political parties, both of them. And now this happens. They should just be nationalized. The same goes for these electric companies like PG&E, who literally killed people. If the rail company fails to meet the demands, in response to EPA's announcement, Norfolk Southern said it has been working to clean up the site and will continue helping residents. We recognize we have a responsibility and we have committed to doing what's right for the residents of East Palestine. Yeah, too late. We have been paying for the cleanup activities to date and will continue to do so. We are committed to thoroughly and safely clean the site, and we are reimbursing the residents for the disruption this has caused in their lives. We are investing in helping East Palestine thrive for the long term, and we'll continue to be in the community for as long as it takes. We're going to learn from this terrible accident and work with regulators and elected officials to improve rail. Well, it's like the audacity. The audacity to literally make a statement saying, quote, we are going to learn from this terrible accident. There's nothing to learn from this, okay? It was you motherfuckers who lobbied, who bought politicians to lax regulations that led to these safety issues. The only thing we're learning here is that you shouldn't exist. That's it. The only thing that we should be learning here is that maybe we need to take a bold step here and send a message and nationalize them. Governor and EPA chief toast with tap water. Hours before the EPA's announcement, Reagan and Governor DeWine visited an East Palestine home and tried to reassure residents that municipal water supply is safe. They raised 2 glasses filled with water straight from the tap and toasted before drinking. The municipal water comes from the 5 wells deep underground that are encased in steel, the state officials have said. But residents with private well water should get that water tested before using it, since that water may be sourced from closer to the ground surface. They raised 2 glasses filled with water from the tap and toasted before drinking. The municipal water supply comes from the 5 wells deep underground that are encased in steel, the state official said, but residents with private wells should get that water tested. State and local authorities will continue the water sampling efforts, and the EPA will continue indoor air screenings to residents within the evacuation zone. But I recognize that no matter how much data we collect or we provide, it will not be enough to completely reassure everybody. It may not be enough to restore the sense of safety and security that this community once had, but we're going to work together day by day for as long as it takes to make sure that this community feels at home once again. The soil under the railroad track at the site of the wrecks is still contaminated, and the tracks need to be lifted and to remove that soil. So the director of the Ohio EPA, the governor, acknowledged residents' concern about the contaminated soil and said 4,588 cubic yards of soil, about 1.1 million gallons of contaminated water, have been removed from East Palestine. The railroad got the tracks back on and started running, and the soil under the tracks has not been dealt with. The tracks will have to be taken up so that the soil can be removed. To address the growing reports of rashes, headaches, nausea, and other symptoms in East Palestine, the state opened up a new health clinic for residents. The new health clinic will have RNs and mental health specialists, at times a toxicologist, said the Ohio Department of Health. Medical teams from the U.S. CDC and Department of Health are expected to arrive in the community as early as this week to assess what dangers might remain. Authorities have repeatedly assured residents that the air and municipal water supply in the town are safe. The crews have checked hundreds of homes that have not yet detected any dangerous levels of contaminants. Still, life in East Palestine have been uprooted, and residents question the findings and wonder whether it's really safe to drink the water or breathe the air. It will be more important to monitor people's health and the environment around the train derailment for some time to come, since health impacts may not emerge until later. We should never say we're done looking at this community for potential exposures and health impacts. Some waterways are contaminated after the crash, killing an estimated 3,500 fish, but officials say believe those contaminants have been contained. Norfolk Southern installed booms and dams to restrict the flow of contaminated water from the Sulphur Run and Leslie Run. Two streams where fish were found dead. The spill did flow to the Ohio River during the initial slug, but the Ohio River is very large and it's a water body that's able to dilute the pollutants pretty quickly. Kavalik said that the agency is pretty confident that the low levels of contaminants that remain are not getting passed to water consumers. So yeah, all this TLDR, yeah, they're still basically working on this. We'll continue to monitor what happened here. But unfortunately, as strong as the rhetoric is coming from the EPA, quite frankly, it's too late. Which kind of segues into this story. Buttigieg calls for stronger railroad safety rules after the East Palestine disaster. Well, hello. You're the Secretary of Transportation. You're not new to this job. And what I mean by that is you haven't, it's not like you just got selected to be the Secretary of Transportation. You've been there for a while now. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg says he's taking steps to impose a stronger regulation of freight trains hauling toxic chemicals such as the one derailed and exploded into flames near East Palestine. He's also calling on Congress to untie the agency's hands in regards to this legislation that weakened the Department of Transportation's ability to enforce safety and accountability rules. You have a new diploma. Yes, I saw that. Buttigieg accused the rail industry of employing vigorous resistance to increase safety measures, which he says has thwarted efforts to strengthen tank cars and mandate a better braking system on trains that carry volatile fuels. Okay, but you're the Secretary of Transportation, okay? And furthermore, it's really rich that, like, we understand how, we understand the problem here about, like, the lack of deregulation, on the same breath that the same corporation that had a hand in this is saying, like, yeah, we're learning from this incident. Is he admitting that corporations run the government? It's not the first time anybody's said that. It's not the first time that anybody's talked about undue influence. Undue influence of capital. But then if you had genuinely wanted reform, you have to surely back Buttigieg in his attempts to use this energy to push back against the company. Yeah, I'm not fighting the idea that we need to strengthen regulations, that these things should have been done. I'm just angry that he's been at this for a while now and nothing. In fact, I'm pretty sure that some regulations were coming soon, but never materialized. Old Pete saying this, the quiet part out loud. I don't know what you're talking about. There have been several people who talk about the idea of private interests in government. I mean, Bernie Sanders has talked about this. An elected senator. So I'm not sure what you mean. Buttigieg ain't that guy for that. He's a corporatist shill trying to reincarnate the Obama cadence. Okay. I'm not sure what. Okay. Anyways, profit and expediency must never outweigh the safety of the American people. We at the U.S. Department of Transportation are doing everything in our power to improve rail safety, and we insist that the rail industry do the same, while inviting Congress to work with us to raise the bar. Safety advocate, and like now, so now, let's say this is, fine, okay. Are Republicans going to actually, back out of like decades and decades and decades of messaging about regulations are bad? How are we going to square that circle? And this is what I was saying. James. Safety advocates say Buttigieg has been slow to respond to the rail disaster, and the Department of Transportation has been slow to take up new rail safety regulations in 2 years. He's been in the office. I mean, Buttigieg tried to shift the blame to the industry, suggesting its heavy lobbying led to Congress to limit the Department of Transportation's ability to act. Fine. That's a fair point. But you're the Secretary of Transportation. Sometimes it's unfortunately needs a crisis to really jettison a cause to the forefront, I guess, but I mean, didn't have to be this way. They'll just blame Democrats, and Democrats will blame Republicans, and nothing will get done. Well, I mean, the Republicans are the ones that are currently in the House, right? They're the ones that set the agenda. They're the ones that set the pace of what gets passed and what doesn't. So right now, the Republicans are the ones that are right now, the Republicans are the ones that are in the House. So it would behoove them to make these changes and then have to explain to their base why decades of their rhetoric is suddenly now 180 degrees. Republicans especially have called Buttigieg's response lacking. Buttigieg's pushback, saying Republicans in Congress have watered down this agency's rail safety efforts. I mean, yeah. Buttigieg reiterated the need for strong railroad safety rules and enforcement power in an interview with Morning Edition. The investigation into root cause is being led by the National Transportation Safety. The board, NTSB, is independent with good reason. We will know more when they issue their final report. It is not too soon to push forward a change in how the industry approaches safety, and that's exactly what we're calling for today. Again, it's true. But, I mean, like, damn. There's also, a few weeks ago, well, no, a couple months ago, there was a threat of a rail strike because part of the problem here was part of the concern of the workers were safety concerns. Safety concerns. He also said that people in these paths have a right to be concerned. He points to the action the federal government is taking from the EPA to the CDC. The EPA said it would take control of the cleanup and train operator Norfolk would have to pay the cost. It's an all hands on deck no matter what. No matter where you have multiple federal agencies partnering with state government and local authorities to get these residents everything that they need. Jesus Christ. Anyways, a little too late. What is it? A day late and $1 short. I think it's plainly obvious the reform is needed and that something needs to change. Yeah, of course. And that should have happened a while ago. I mean, that should have happened months ago. There was a reason why these railroad workers were on the brink of striking before they got broken up. But it's likely going to take more than politicians' good words. It's going to take, it will likely need people visibly backing him and calling them out. I don't support Pete most of the time, but this is maybe a fight worth fighting. Oh, I'm not disagreeing with the idea that we need more regulations. And I'm not disagreeing that but it's just harder to sell it to people. It's just harder for people to believe you when your party is also complicit. I'm not saying that he's wrong. He is right. We do need regulation. It is this Norfolk whatever has a responsibility. They have blame to shoulder. But it's kind of hard to sell that to people or to try to kind of rally people behind the cause when the same party was basically saying oh, we need to avoid and break up a rail strike for the sake of the economy. Well, here's your economy. Okay? There it is. Let me show you. There it is right there. Alio with the 14 biddies. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. They're running the railroads into the ground so that the government will have to bail them out and pay for maintenance. Yeah, then nationalize them. I mean, that's what I said at the beginning. These railroad companies should be relieved of their necessity to be involved with any of our infrastructure or anything like that. Just nationalize them. Fuck them. I don't care. This is enough for me to essentially, I think, make a pretty good and convincing argument to just nationalize these rail companies. And maybe this is me being too cynical or too harsh, but who is out there supporting those strikers? We can point out everyone who voted for Democrats to choose what they did, but we can't point to many who were out there standing side by side with the rail workers. The balance is skewed and it validates the behaviors. Sure. Right, but I'm saying that instead, the Biden administration should have been more harsher on the railroad companies when they had the ball in their court. When they had the ball in their court, they chose not to put more favorable options for the workers. That's the issue. I'd be okay with nationalizing rails and subsidized maintenance by private companies leasing them. Nah, fuck them. I don't give a shit. Nope. No private interest anywhere near national infrastructure. Don't care. The same goes for power companies. I think that they, at this point, should be relieved of their needs. They shouldn't be allowed to exist. They should be relieved of that duty, and they should be nationalized. The same thing with the power companies. It's that simple. There's no need for power companies to exist in private interests, in private hands. Couldn't stand with the railroad striking workers because the rail workers weren't allowed to strike. Right. Pete is counting on railroads to get him elected as whatever. Why he waited until public opinion forced him to say something. He hasn't done anything. Yeah, Congress needs to act. Congress definitely needs to act. There's no if, and, or buts about it. That's for sure. Congress definitely needs to act. Let's keep the pressure on Pete. Yeah, it's not just Pete, though. It's not just Pete Buttigieg. It's not just Pete Buttigieg. There's a lot of players here. There's a lot of players here. It's not just Pete Buttigieg. It's the company. It's the Republican Party as well for loosening these regulations. There's blame to go around, trust me. There's definitely blame to go around. Democratic Representative Barbara Lee launches bid for California Senate, held by retiring Dianne Feinstein. It is official. Barbara Lee is running for the for Dianne Feinstein's seat. Representative Barbara Lee announced on today that she will be joining the competitive 2024 Democratic race for the Senate, held by retiring Dianne Feinstein. I say break the cycle of R&R buying politicians by making them unelectable if you back the railroads and not the people. I mean, yeah, but also it's not... I think that definitely public pressure is necessary, not only on just this current administration, but also the Republican Party, who again now has to perform Olympic mental gymnastics to either ignore this whole thing or B, admit that we need regulations. Yeah, I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene is unhinged. I don't know what to tell you, Alio. She's unhinged. I'm pretty sure we'll have a Tim Pool video about that. Guaranteed. But whatever. Maybe I just want to make an example out of Pete because I dislike him so much. Yeah, but it's not. Yeah, like I said, it's not just Pete. There's a lot of players here. Californians deserve a strong progressive leader. There's not even hinges there to be true. To be fair, yeah, true. To be fair, that's very true. Californians deserve a strong progressive leader who has delivered real change. Lee 76 said in his social media post unveiling her long-rumored campaign for the coveted seat. Lee's announcement makes her the third major Democratic candidate in the running. Whoa. For the seat that the 89-year-old Feinstein has held since '92, since I was literally a baby, more or less. Representative Katie Porter and Adam Schiff, both California Dems, have already thrown their hats in the ring. I can immediately tell you, I'm pretty sure that I would be A-okay if it was either Katie Porter or Barbara Lee. Yeah, I don't know, Elio. If elected in 2024, Lee would become the only black woman serving in the U.S. Senate. A campaign launch video highlighted Lee's personal struggles and experience in major civil rights movements as it touted her progressive record. And when my high school said cheerleaders couldn't be black, I took them on. I worked with the NAACP and earned my spot as, guess what, the school's first black cheerleader. She noted her work in passing legislative protections for women and people in the LGBTQ community and her efforts to secure global AIDS funding. They also trumpeted her lonely opposition to a broad expansion of presidential powers, war powers, just days after September 11. I think that this is one of the more significant things. One of the more significant accolades, not accolades. I don't know, triumphs, whatever you want to call it. He's a factor through. He's had 2 years to fix this. Trump kowtowed to the train lobbyists by deregulation, and Biden acknowledged. And Biden kowtowed to the lobbyists when told the workers were going to bring up the safety concerns to get back to work. She wasn't just one of the few. She was the only one. Yes, libservative. Yeah, so basically, the Trump administration initiated a lot of deregulation, which Republicans were so proud of. Thank you. That's the word that I was looking for. Credential. Credential. Sorry, I was like thinking of like all the wrong words, but yes, the correct word is credential. Yes, so Republicans are now going to have to square that circle, which is what I was saying. But yeah, even Bernie voted for it. That's right, which he admitted to her, I think, actually, that was a mistake. Open House seats, 7 members of the House announced they will not run for re-election. Oh yeah, okay. I think you could go down the option of trying to elect different people. It could achieve rail reform, but it relies on one big assumption: the legislative failure is sole responsibility of the lawmakers. If instead, what if Pete says it's true, and that lawmakers are restrained by lack of power and means, then picking new candidates will do nothing. It'll be a waste of time. You might end up picking less capable legislators. Right, but like, it is with the power of legislators that this happened, and legislators can fix it, more or less. I know that the Department of Transportation has their own parameters that they can do. But yeah, the legislative branch is the one to really fix this. And like I said, I mean, hey, if you ask me, I would just threaten with nationalization and be done with it. But that's me. Lee trumpeted her lonely opposition to the broad expansion of presidential war powers after the September 11th, 2001 terror attacks. In the face of countless death threats, I was the only no vote. The 12th-term congresswoman who has been in the House since 98 and is now vying to succeed her state's longest-serving senator appeared to anticipate attacks from her long tenure in politics. For those who say my time has passed, well, when does making change go out of style? Feinstein said she will retire when her current term expires in 2024, opening up one of the most powerful and reliably blue seats in the Senate. As Republicans control the House in November, midterms, a chance to represent California in the remaining chamber, where Democrats hold a slim majority, is expected to produce a crowded, expensive, intense primary. So, yeah. Barbara Lee has officially thrown her hat in the ring. So that's pretty cool. Who is the furthest left? I don't know. I think that like it's pretty hard to say. Like Barbara Lee and Katie Porter are like pretty much the furthest ones, but I don't know which one. I don't know which one is more to the left. I think maybe Barbara Lee. Nationalization or trust busting. Taft had a tussle with the rail companies regarding freight fees like 100 years ago. He sicked his AG after them and they got in line. Yeah, I mean, you gotta be strong with these corporations. I mean, honestly, they shouldn't even exist at this point. It's so unbelievably infuriating. They should just not exist. Period. All right. Let's take a look at this one. Florida's great displacement. For the clowns who keep talking about how, oh, well, you know, climate change wasn't real, why do they keep developing in Florida? Okay. Running rails is a matter of national security, should not be profit driven. Sure, yeah. Yeah. I don't think that came from Hillary. It came from Romney, I guess. I just don't see how nationalization could be a reality without some kind of mass social movement engaging in civil disobedience. Oh, yeah, no, yes, you're right. It'd be asking a hell of a lot of other ordinary people to have that much commitment to rail reform, especially when they could instead do it for healthcare if they were really motivated. True. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's a very good point. God, what an F situation. As many residents will be proud to tell you, 1,000-odd islands that make up the Florida Keys are one of a kind. There's no other place in the world that boasts the same combination of geological, ecological, and sociological characteristics. The islands have a special addictive quality about it and an air of freedom that leads people to turn their backs on mainland life. The Keys are also the first flock of canaries in the coal mine of climate change. Over the past few years, residents of these islands have been forced to confront a phenomenon that will affect millions of Americans before the end of the century. The present calamity offers a glimpse of our national future. Nature's changing. Sure. Today's hurricanes tend to be stronger, wetter, and less predictable than those of the last century. They hold more moisture, speed up more quickly, and stay together longer. It is difficult to tell for certain what role climate change plays in an individual storm, but in the case of Hurricane Irma, which slammed the Keys in 2017, there's little doubt that the warmth of the Caribbean Sea made the storm more powerful, allowing the vortex to gain strength overnight as it barreled towards the islands. As global warming continues to ratchet up the temperature of our oceans, we can expect more storms like Irma. The danger to the Keys doesn't end with hurricane season either. A slow but definite rise in average sea levels over the past decade have contributed to an increase in tidal flooding, leaving some roads and neighborhoods inundated with saltwater for months at a time. In the 5 years since Irma, the bill has come due. The hurricane made undeniable what previous floods had only suggested, that climate change will someday make life in the archipelago impossible to sustain. And like someday is not just like, generation. No. Someday is like decades. Okay? Someday is like before the turn of the century, which isn't really that long in the grand scheme of things. The storm was the first episode in a long and turbulent process of collapse, one that will expand over time to include market contraction, government disinvestment, and eventually wholesale retreat towards the mainland. Irma may not have destroyed the Keys in one stroke, but the storm ran down the clock on the life of the islands, pushing Conchas, the Keys' unique name for residents, into a future that once seemed remote. The impulse to stay, which once bespoke a conscious devotion to his or her adopted home, now looks a little more like denial. The decision to leave, on the other hand, which once signified surrender, now looks like an acceptance of the inevitable. The term climate migration is an attempt to explain why people leave one place in favor of another. It assigns motivation to the movements that may be voluntary or involuntary, temporary or permanent. Yet, even if the primary cause for migration is clear, there's still countless other factors that influence when, where, and how someone moves in response to a disaster. It's the messiness that is reflected in the word displacement, the migratory shifts caused by climate change that are chaotic as the weather events that cause them. For some families, the decision to depart the Keys was easy. The storm was a traumatic event, more than enough to convince many people that life on the islands was just too dangerous to accept. But they came back home, fixed up their houses, and got out. That was the case for Connie and Glenn Fast, who left the island city of Marathon for the mountains of North Carolina after spending almost 50 years in the Keys. It's pretty much immediate. It's just too hard to start over. When you get older, we couldn't risk it. The Fasts have lived the kind of life you can only live in the Keys. Connie worked on commercial fishing boats in a local aquarium, while Glenn owned a boat maintenance company and raced skis in his spare time. Jet skis in his spare time. They had stuck it out in the Keys through several major storms, including 2005's Hurricane Wilma, which brought 5 feet of water to their little island and totaled 3 of their cars. Connie still shudders when she remembers the image of her husband wading through the water around the house, with snakes climbing all over him, clinging to him for shelter from the flood. The Fast had second thoughts after the storm, but the Keys were paradise, and besides, they didn't know where else to go. When Irma came 12 years later, the choice was much easier. During the evacuation, it took the Fasts a week to find a decaying hotel in Orlando where they could wait out the storm. As the hurricane passed over the center of the state, it knocked out their power, leaving them and their pets to spend the night in 100-degree heat without air conditioning. That was it for us, not just the Keys, but Florida altogether. Jesus Christ. Can you imagine? They're also eroding roads that will be underwater in a couple of years. Yep. Yeah, I went to South Florida, and I had my altimeter, and it's below sea level, so, just saying. When they returned to Marathon, they discovered that their home was the only one in the neighborhood with the intact roof. They put the house on the market as soon as they could, but it took a year for the place to sell, in part because property values have risen so steeply that most people in the area couldn't afford to buy. Wait, because property values had risen so steeply? Okay, sure. Hey, Carpet Packs, how's it going? Yeah, I can't imagine the property values there, but okay. Especially after a massive storm. Cool. The storm had scared so many people off, but it also destroyed a quarter of the Keys' housing stock, which drove up prices for the homes that survived. In the meantime, the Fasts saw their friends start to leave as well, one to Sarasota, another to Orlando, and a third friend, who had been the first ever mayor of Marathon, talked about moving to Central Florida. We thought it would be devastating when we left, because we loved the Keys, but when we pulled out of there, we were so relieved. Yeah, fucking Aquaman cornering the market. True. Hundreds of people like Fast left the Keys off their own volition in the years after Irma, deciding one way or another that the risk of staying there outweighed the benefits. But perhaps the more turbulent phenomenon after the storm was the involuntary displacement caused by the shortage of affordable housing on the islands. The storm destroyed not only the massive mobile home parks on the island, like Big Pine, but also hundreds of so-called downstairs enclosures, small apartment-style units that sat beneath elevated homes. It also wiped out dozens, if not hundreds, of livable live-board boats and other older apartment complexes, liveaboard boats and older apartment complexes in island cities like Marathon. These trailer parks and apartment complexes have been havens for resort waiters, boats buffers, and bartenders, allowing them to get a foothold in an archipelago that had long become unaffordable for anyone who wasn't rich. Now that housing was gone and FEMA's 50% rule, which prohibits improvements to infrastructure that cost 50% of its market value, prohibited most trailers and downstairs enclosures from being rebuilt. Many of those who have been lucky enough to own small homes or campers hadn't been able to afford insurance, which meant they missed out on payouts that went to wealthy homeowners and part-time vacationers. Cool. So capitalism essentially exacerbated the kind of problem. Nice. Cool. To make matters worse, the government of the Keys couldn't build enough new homes to fill the gap created by capitalism. Nah, the storm only exacerbated this issue, okay? But whatever. The state had long imposed a de facto cap on number of building permits in Monroe County, which encompasses the island, could issue an attempt to make sure the population did not grow too large to evacuate the aliens in a single day. Thus, it was impossible for most residents to either build their old homes or buy new ones. Some of those who lost their homes were able to crash with friends and family, and others got by living in tents or trailers, but others resorted to a forced homeless encampment. The lack of housing made the storm survivors feel as they were stuck in a permanent limbo. Life on islands became a game of musical chairs, in which only the highest bidder could end up with a seat. Capitalism. Seems like rich people will always be fine. Seems like it. Deborah McConaughey, the rector at St. Columba Episcopal Church, spent the years after Irma trying to forestall this involuntary displacement. When the storm hit, McConaughey and much of her congregation were in Ireland, retracing the steps of the original St. Columba, and by the time they returned to the Keys, it was clear that housing would be defining the challenge of the next few years. Everybody's house was destroyed, and that's what people needed the most. We were speaking in the church's open-air pavilion where McConaughey had been delivering outdoor sermons even before the coronavirus pandemic. Irma had weakened the timbers. It's like a priest, but for Episcopal church. Gotcha. Had weakened the timbers that support the roof of the central chapel, forcing the church to move worship outside. Yeah, so TLDR, like, it's just like a small window of what we will be looking at more frequently throughout the years. Every hurricane season is closer and closer to looking like this quite frequently. I mean, we saw what happened with Hurricane Ian not too long ago. And these kind of things are going to be commonplace. I do actually recall talking about this to either yourself or Becky about how you'll not only have climate migration into the U.S., but you'll have migration within the U.S. and it'll likely cause tensions between states and, well, of course, vast inequalities in safety and basic living facilities. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, you're completely correct. You might have mentioned that here, and you might have also mentioned that in her channel, because I'm usually there watching. So yeah, you're 100% true, correct. So expect this to be kind of like the new norm, and see what kind of negative externalities this is going to have. All right, folks. Not just from storms and flooding and nothing, and also things like Great Salt Lake is drying up and making Salt Lake uninhabitable. Oh yeah, no, this is not limited to just like, Florida. There's like tens of millions of people that have their water supplies threatened in the Midwest. By like those states, the simulacra. There's tens of millions of people, and instead we get essentially, as S.V. Harkin just pointed out, an opportunity to bet against the availability of water, or we'll see companies buying up like water rights, land that has water rights. the internal migration to the U.S. is definitely a little interesting. Some of the weird takeaways I've seen from this data is that, one, there's lots of people leaving blue states and lots of people entering red states. There's lots of people moving to at-risk areas for things like wildfires, but both components are driven by poor people seeking more affordable living, and which also means the rich getting to stay in safer, more harmonious, more liberal areas. Yep. Yep. All right, folks, we did it. And we did it in perfect timing, folks. Unbelievable. All right, folks. Whilst the poor have to deal with uncertainty over abortion access, job security, and benefits, and law and safety, and all these things that come with living in more conservative states. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. All right, folks, I have got to get going. I appreciate all the support that you guys are giving. You guys are what's make this channel grow. Whew, excuse me. You guys are what makes this channel grow, and I really appreciate the support. Yes, please do so. Please, you can definitely drop in articles in the Discord. Thank you so much, Alio, for the biddies. Thank you, Maple Leaf Dragon, for the tier 1 sub. Thank you to Libservative for the follows. I appreciate all the new folks here. If you guys enjoy the content, don't forget to hit the follow button. You get 6 free emotes, including 2 Bakita the Cat emotes. Also, if you want to support the channel, and you don't have the monetary means to do so, that is A-okay. You can do so by hitting the follow button. And if you want to take it a step further, head on over to the YouTube channel. Hit the big red subscribe button. It really does help us out. 217 of you have already hit that big red subscribe button, so that's pretty cool. I appreciate that. And, of course, spread the word far and wide. We're here Monday through Thursday, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. So bring a friend. As always, folks, please stay safe. Please take care of each other. I love you all, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Oh, wait, before I go, really quickly, just to give like a quick shout out, please head on over to twitch.tv/carpetpacks and head on over to twitch.tv/AlioShare. Just quick shout outs to the diamonds in chat. I appreciate that. Appreciate you folks hanging out. As I was saying, please stay safe. Please take care of each other. I love you all, and I hope to see you guys in the next one tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you, Michael Hassler. I appreciate you being in the chat. Thank you for keeping order. See ya. All right, folks, hang tight. We're heading out in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. See ya.